Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada. Good morning, everybody, on this Tuesday, the 30th of June, in the year of the plague, 2020. The big news yesterday, and this is the rundown of what you need to know, was that the Supreme Court made two rulings, one on the Louisiana abortion law and one on the consumer watchdog group. So conservatives think it was 1-1. It was really 0-1-1, meaning the Louisiana case can be read in two different ways. And a lot of conservative critics of John Roberts, who've hated him since the Obamacare decision, which was a brilliant decision, chose yesterday to renew their John Roberts is David Souter nonsense, even on the same day that he struck down the structure of the consumer agency as being unconstitutional. No, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. I always have trouble remembering that. The Chief Justice, in not striking down the Louisiana law, reminded people that the controlling case law on abortion in the United States is Casey. Not Roe, it's Casey. Some people say Roe v. Wade, but it's not Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was gutted long ago and replaced by Casey. Casey controls. 5 years ago, the same law that was upheld yesterday was considered by a different Supreme Court, and they upheld the law. They struck down the Texas law limiting the ability of doctors to perform abortions if they did not have the right to visit a hospital nearby. Same law, 5 years later, different court. Chief Justice, who voted to uphold the Texas law 5 years ago when the court struck it down, got the same law from Louisiana yesterday and voted to uphold it as the court, and voted to strike it down as the court did. So he changed his position. And the reason he changed his position, the Texas law was unconstitutional. Yeah, guys, it's hard to do. This is why teaching con law is hard to do. The Texas law was, in John Roberts' opinion 5 years ago, unconstitutional. The Louisiana law, in John Roberts' view today, is constitutional. He explains his changed vote by virtue of the application of the doctrine of stare decisis, which is law should be settled. Now, he has an opinion in the famous Citizens United case on when you flip cases, when you jettison old precedents. I thought under that he might jettison this, but clearly it's not a big enough deal. Now, I know the pro-life people out there will say it's a big deal, every life counts. I understand that. But in constitutional terms, Roberts, in his concurring opinion, which controls, the four liberals don't matter. They can write 1,000 pages, it doesn't matter. What matters is what Roberts wrote. And what he wrote was, quote, neither party has asked us to reassess the constitutional validity of the Casey standard. I added the word Casey, but that's what he implied. So that the whole case comes down to this. The Chief Justice wrote in his concurring opinion, neither party has asked us to reassess the constitutional validity of the Casey standard. Somebody needs to ask the court to overrule Casey. A case must reach, the court does not reach out and grab doctrine. It does not overrule that which has not been argued. It requires a record before it that Casey should be overruled. I believe there are 5 clear votes to do that now. I think that the Chief Justice is begging some state legislature that is pro-life to challenge Casey. Just challenge Casey. Ban abortion. And say we are doing so on the basis of Casey not being appropriate. Or ban abortion, say viability is now defined at 3 weeks. Do anything radical, pass it as a test case, and send it up to the court while these 5 justices are there. But Roberts said yesterday, don't send me a case that was decided under Casey 5 years ago without asking me to reverse Casey, because I'm not going to take a single. If we're going to rewrite this, we're going to rewrite it. That's the best interpretation. I know it doesn't, conservatives don't like it. Don't complain to me about Roberts until the end of the week, then I might complain with you. Our Lady of Guadalupe is coming. That's the most important case of the term. It's the free exercise case that tells religious organizations that they can hire who they want based on doctrine. It means, for example, a Catholic high school does not need to keep employed one of its faculty that divorces and remarries without permission of the church, without an annulment. That's what Our Lady of Guadalupe means. It means freedom for all churches, all faiths, to practice their religion, to exercise their religious rights. It's a big case. I think it's coming down Thursday. A couple of other big cases coming down Thursday, including Little Sisters of the Poor, including the Montana Little Blaine Amendment. I'll give you my assessment. I got asked yesterday by the Post to write an assessment of this case, and I said I'm not going to. I'm going to wait till the end of the week. I know people are upset with Roberts, but you got to see the whole picture before you decide how the term went. I was very pleased with the decision that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau cannot have immunity from control by the president. There is one executive branch. There is a strong majority for that proposition. Elizabeth Warren put on a happy face and said, don't worry, it's still there. Yeah, there's an agency still there, but the president who wins, controls it. Re-elect Donald Trump, it won't be a problem. Put Joe Biden in, they'll bring business to a halt. That is the choice, by the way. Elect Donald Trump and the economy will recover. Elect his opponent, Joe Biden, and it will not. So what else happened yesterday? The biggest story internationally is what China's national security law means. Reading from the Wall Street Journal, China's legislature approved Tuesday a sweeping new law aimed at quashing threats to national security in Hong Kong, rejecting Western criticism that Beijing's effort will curb people's freedom. The legislation was passed by senior Chinese lawmakers, and it's going to have an enormous impact on freedom in Hong Kong. If you've got a business there, get out. If you've got a bank there, get out. It might take you a year, might take you 2 years, get out. Let me talk about some good news on the virus front. I personally believe the media is attempting to overplay the second outbreak in an effort to hurt Donald Trump. The numbers bear me up. Remember, at the height of the pandemic in May, America suffered 2,700 deaths. Yesterday, there were 338 deaths. On Sunday, there were 250. On Friday, there were 506. On Thursday, there were 599. On Wednesday, there were 644. What do you see? The number of deaths are declining in the United States, even as the number of cases skyrocket. Why is that? Doctors are better equipped at treating it. Younger people are getting it. So the reopening has slowed down, but it hasn't stopped. And the variant that we have, there's a story on which variant we have, is the one that's gotten more contagious. So the virus is even more contagious than it was 3 months ago, but it's killing fewer people even as far more people get infected. Why? Because they're younger, stronger, less fragile, better treatment. Meanwhile, China has fast-tracked the coronavirus vaccine based on advanced genetic technology. Its military is using it. I don't know if it's going to work. If it works, we don't know if they'll give it to us. But that is very good news for the world. They also have 3 other candidates ready to begin trials. In Scotland, there is a T-cell coronavirus therapy, not a vaccine, that has been approved that is very innovative. They believe it's going to be very successful for coronavirus patients. And the Financial Times tells us about a coronavirus pill developed by a tiny biotech company. It's a long shot, EIDD 2801. But if it works, it's again a home run. What does all that mean? That means we've got a lot more cases with a lot more therapies and a lot fewer deaths. Don't understand. I'll do the story about the Russian bounty after the break. The news media only cares about one thing: defeating Donald Trump. So you've got to open your lens to a great deal more. By the way, the political analysis yesterday is Donald Trump's reelection got easier because the Supreme Court did not indicate to the masses that they're about to overturn Casey. So that's what I think they're about to do. Stay tuned, America.
This is Lan Hee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lan Hee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedouins,
bootlicker,
black white supremacists,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a coon award over there. Coon of the Year award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
racial,
racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Welcome back, America. Good morning to you. Time for the business story of the morning. Brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. Together they are AndrewandTodd.com. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, but they have their own office within Sierra Pacific. They have their own team. They have trained them themselves. If you go to AndrewandTodd.com or call 888-888-1172, they'll take care of your lending needs. The 10-year Treasury this morning is at 0.64%. That's really remarkable. 0.64%. And so if you have any desire whatsoever to borrow money against your house, you do it now when these interest rates are so low. If you want to refinance your house and lower the number of years you have left to pay it off from 30 to 20 or 20 to 15, now is the time to do it. You want to buy a second home, if you want to get equity out, you want to do a reverse mortgage, you're a senior, you're 862 and you want more money, you go to AndrewandTodd.com. If you're looking on my screen, you should see a little bug for it. You'll see Andrew Del Rey's smiling face. 888-888-1172, AndrewandTodd.com. Now, what happened yesterday is that the Dow went up a lot. 580 points yesterday. The NASDAQ went up 116. The S&P went up 44. Why did that happen? That happened because Boeing's 737 MAX took off on its first certification flight. Now, this is a short trading week. We're not going to be trading on Friday because it's the July 3rd holiday for July 4th. But the 737 is vital to America's aeronautical future, and it got a big green light yesterday, taking out. It's fixed. So the Dow went up 580 points. Boeing went up 14%. This, by the way, on a day that Amazon didn't have a great day. It went down $12. And the second big story of the day, business stories on Amazon. But the Dow and NASDAQ, everybody had a great day, despite the fact that the tech leader Amazon went down a little bit. That tells you how strong it is. Enormously strong. There's a second part to that story, though. The big news yesterday was home sales. An enormous resurgence in housing occurred in May. A stronger than expected 44.3% jump in pending home sales in May. That means almost half again as many people wanted to buy a home in May as did in April. Why is that? Hugh Hewitt doing mass psychology right here. People now know COVID is a danger to old people. To people who are 70 and 75 and 80, the older you get, the more dangerous it is. And young people or middle-aged people or people who want their second or third homes, people who are moving up or moving in, they went out and they started just grabbing everything for sale, taking all the inventory off the market. That's why AndrewandTodd.com are as busy as they have ever been. That's why I think you ought to go online to get started at AndrewandTodd.com and tell people, tell them what you need, what you're looking for. If you're going to buy a home, get pre-qualified, get a pre-qualified letter. New home purchases pending in May, pending home sales up 44.3%. That's extraordinary. That's the V-shaped recovery that Democrats are worried about. That's what's going to get Donald Trump reelected, is the economy that he has cleared away regulatory hurdles to recovery, which President Obama and Joe Biden put in place in their 8 years. We do not want that back. We want the Trump economy back. The one that the Chinese blew up when they allowed the virus to escape from Wuhan. That is not, by the way, saying that they did a bioweapon. It's just saying they were recklessly negligent, scurrilously conspiratorial about it. And it's crippled the world economy. But that new home sale, that's the best number I have seen in months. Pending home sales jumped 44%. Have you heard that story anywhere else? No, because the bad news, people are trying to destroy Trump. When I come back, we're going to talk about Russians. I got Admiral Stavridis coming up as well. The absurdity of that story yesterday, it wasn't in the president's briefing because the CIA briefer did not believe it. The CIA doesn't believe it. They don't have confidence in it. And the New York Times is doing what the New York Times always tries to do, wreck Donald Trump. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Job Creators Network Foundation.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
A dominant theme of everything that I write and broadcast is behavior matters, not thoughts. You judge people by their thoughts? That's what the left does, by the way. That is what the left does. This is all a product of the denial of reality. Oh my God, what Jimmy Kimmel said, that is so disgusting. Why? Because the question is not was it disgusting? The question is, was it true? What is a normal heterosexual male supposed to think about a girl in a bikini and high-heeled shoes under a waterfall? What a lovely bikini. Wonder where she got those high heels? Where'd you get your PhD that you find it so disgusting? What women's studies program taught you that this is disgusting? Now, is it a problem? It sure is. Male sexuality is a problem. That is entirely correct. By the way, female emotions are a problem too. Both sexes have big battles with their natures. If you know one college that has taught that to its students, or high school, the odds are, if it exists, it is a profoundly religious school. Most religious schools are worthless, unfortunately.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
According to court papers that were filed yesterday, Joe Biden appears to have personally raised the idea of investigating Michael Flynn for potentially violating the obscure, never-used Logan Act when he talked to the Russian ambassador at the time. These were previously sealed documents. If the media was worth a damn, pardon my language, I'm in a bad mood today. If they were worth a damn, there'd be a big front page story that reveals facts, like this one. The then FBI director, James Comey, acknowledged during a meeting that involved Sally Yates, possibly Susan Rice, that General Flynn's conversation with Sergei Kislyak his conversations, quote, appear legit, according to the federal court filing out of Washington, D.C. that were just revealed. This was revealed in handwritten notes that were prepared by this disgraced ex-FBI agent, Peter Strzok. Flynn's lawyers are referring to this as stunning and exculpatory evidence. But of course, now the government has dropped the case, dropped the charges. But listen to this. This is where it matters. A partially blacked out copy of Peter Strzok's notes is attached to the filing and includes a mention that appears to say, this is scrawled, this is like chicken scratch, but it appears to say VP : Logan Act.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Folks, I'm talking to my friend Larry Elder, who has produced a glorious film called Uncle Tom, UncleTom.com. Larry Elder, who are some of the figures that appear in this film? I mentioned a couple of them a moment ago.
You mentioned Carol Swain. She was a law professor at Vanderbilt in Tennessee.
caught all sorts of grief because she, among other things, opposed race-based preferences, argued that they actually hurt Black people because you're putting them on a track much faster than they could handle. They would have been perfectly fine at a lesser competitive school, but because we decided that there ought to be some sort of racial mixture at a given school, whether the kid can do the work or not. We've also got Herman Cain in there. Herman Cain was, of course, maligned as an Uncle Tom and a sellout when he ran, because by definition, any Black person who's a Republican is an Uncle Tom and a sellout. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party, which, by the way, we go over in the film, I think, pretty thoroughly. The Democratic Party, of course, is the party of slavery. Democrats unanimously oppose the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment.
Larry, I just want to interrupt. When people say stuff like what you're saying right now, I always have to hit pause and say, nobody knows this. It can't be right that the Democrats are the party of slavery and the KKK. And in your film, you cover a lot of this. Another reason people need to go see Uncle Tom, the film.
This movie was about, one of my liberal friends saw it and said, I'm surprised. I thought Uncle Tom was going to be kind of an autobiography about you. I said, that would have been boring. I'm barely in the movie, as you know. And he said,
If someone you know is always wrong, I mean literally always wrong, how long do you trust them for? Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt. If you've got a brother-in-law and you see him at Thanksgiving or Christmas or summertime vacation every year and he gives you a stock tip every year and he's always wrong, the stock always goes down, do you invest on the basis of that stock tip? If you've got a good friend, I mean, just someone you really like, all right, who always tells you which car to buy, and they regularly tell you to buy the absolute worst car possible, and it breaks down, it's a junker. Do you keep taking advice from them? If you've got a computer specialist who says, I'll be over to fix your computer, and they never fix it, do you keep going back to them? I raise this question of serial error, of the inability to get something right, of repeated misinformation, of just being terrible at their job or whatever it is they believe in, because that's the New York Times when it comes to stories out of the intelligence community. Now, I didn't talk about it much yesterday because I have my suspicions about the New York Times. Whenever I see Eric Schmidt's byline on a story, I say, okay, this is wrong. He's never right. He may have been right once about the color of the sky, or whether the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west, something like that. But he's never right. He always falls for it. Now, the intelligence community is vast, and it's full of never Trump people with TDS. By the way, I know I just had another exposure to TDS, like gamma 5 strength TDS, from someone I don't know. Sent me a TDS letter. We have a friend in common, and I got this kind of crazy letter from them about my Meet the Press appearance. Because I said, well, the president should be reelected because I like his 2 Supreme Court justices, his 53 appeals court justices, his 143 district court justices. I like his military rebuild. I like the deregulation. I think he should be reelected. He's done a good job, and he'll rebuild the economy. Oh, my gosh, I triggered this poor person, so I got this screed. Well, there are people like that in the intelligence community, and they like to cherry pick whatever they can to make the president appear incompetent or ill-informed about matters of national security. So the New York Times is the destination of choice for disgruntled intelligence community people, Eric Schmidt and his gang. And so they fed them a story that the president had been briefed and did not care that the Russians were killing Americans. Now, this was rich. This is really rich because of 2 things. Soleimani was behind the murder of 600 plus Americans, Marines and soldiers, during his reign of terror in Iran and his feeding of Iranian Revolutionary Guard technology, troops, and training to militias inside of Iraq who attacked American troops for 2 presidencies prior to Donald Trump. Neither President Bush nor President Obama, and they each had 8 years to do it in, took out Soleimani. Donald Trump took him out. The guy who was killing Americans, Donald Trump had him killed. Gave the order, sat in the sit room or wherever he was. I don't know if he was Mar-a-Lago or wherever he was when that happened. I can't recall. He gave the order, he took him out. The guy who killed Americans got killed. Al-Baghdadi, who threatened to kill Americans, got killed by Donald Trump. 300 Russians came over the hill in Syria and attacked American troops. I believe it was early 2018. I will check and I'll review that with Admiral Stavridis later in the show. Guess how many went back down the hill? 0. 300 Russians got killed when they attacked Americans. Are there people in Russia who hate America? You bet. They had brothers. They had fathers. They had sons. They were Russian paramilitary. They were there with the approval of Putin, and they probed and they got blown up. You do not mess with our troops, and our American Air Force came to their support. I don't know if it was a spooky. I don't know what got them, but they just got all wiped out. We did not hesitate. Donald Trump does not hesitate to protect American troops. And the Iranians know that. If they hit one of our boats, they're just toast. They blew up our people. We killed Soleimani. That was round 2. Then they lobbed a few ballistic missiles at an empty base after giving us warning because they didn't want round 3, and they stopped. They're afraid of Donald Trump. So along comes this story, Russian bounty. And the intelligence community assesses it. And the senior intelligence people say, we don't think we can trust this. And I spent all day yesterday figuring this out. Talked to everyone. Talked to members of the media who are trying to figure it out too. And did the president really ignore this? And the fact of the matter is, he was not briefed on it because nobody in the senior level trusted the information. If you read it, it's based upon the discovery of cash in a Taliban headquarters and on one captured Taliban report that the Russians had put bounties on American soldiers. Now that, of course, feeds in to the long-standing Trump-Russia nonsense. The Trump asset that Bob Mueller spent 2 years finding out was absolutely nonsense. Completely made up. The Steele dossier, and we will see more about that whole thing when John Durham indicts or doesn't indict. But the intelligence community believed that crap. The FBI believed that crap. Now they believe this crap, and they're trying to get you interested in a story that doesn't exist because they hate Donald Trump. Will somebody open up the phones, Ben? 1-800-501-234. I don't think there is anybody in America who cares about this story. Anyone. Because nobody believes it. And if they ever come to believe it, they know Donald Trump will order the people who ordered Americans killed. That's what he'll do. He did not hesitate to pull the trigger on Soleimani. All right, that's the number one. President Trump today stands accused of not protecting American troops, even though he had Soleimani killed, which scared everybody. If there's one thing the Trump doctrine is if you kill an American, I will kill you. That's the Trump doctrine. It's pretty basic. So there are a couple of reasons why this might have been leaked, I was told. Some people want us out of Afghanistan. I don't want us to leave Afghanistan, and Trump wants to go. They're trying to create the conditions of chaos there where we have to revenge ourselves. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy theory, but I heard it yesterday. The other is just to throw more dust in the air, more Trump Russia, to confuse the Steeler fans out there. Bottom line, the Trump doctrine is very simple. If you kill an American, Trump will try and have you killed. Ed in Las Vegas. Good morning, Ed.
Yes, we lost 1,750 troops due to hostile action and terrorism under Obama Biden. I think so far under Trump, we maybe lost about 50. Certainly one too many. But, I mean, look at the casualty count under Obama Biden.
This is the dumbest story in the world. Trump doesn't care about bounty. He wasn't briefed on it. There is no substantiation for it. And they don't want people to realize what the Trump doctrine is, which you just articulated, Ed. Thank you, my friend. John in Delaware. What do you think, John?
Hugh Hewitt, good morning. I think it's another sham. The news media is out to get Donald Trump. Everybody knows it. You can only cry wolf about 1,000 times before we stop believing you, Hugh.
Well, they nevertheless, it is actually Trump porn. It's just Trump porn for the TDS afflicted. If they can read any, all it is, it's a condition that is, I don't know if it's treatable. I don't know if these people are
history one day, Hugh. It'll be written in the history books, and it'll actually be an actual diagnosis, psychological disorder, Trump derangement syndrome. I said it. You'll see it in the future. It'll be history, sir.
All right. Thank you, John. I don't know if the psychiatrists are pretty anti-Trump, so I don't know. Ray in Georgia. Good morning, Ray.
Hey, how you doing, Hugh?
I'm great. You out there working for David Perdue's re-election?
Yes, sir.
All right, just checking.
Yeah, I just think that the Russian government don't care about an American soldier or two. I don't really believe this bounty thing. If anything, they'd want to go after an aircraft carrier or a battleship group or something. You know?
You know, I could understand where some colonel who lost his brother in that paramilitary wipeout, I believe it's January 2018. I'll look during the break. I could understand someone believing that and, trying to send some money to Taliban, but it just begs the imagination. It does not make any sense, and the president wasn't briefed on it. It's another lie by the New York Times. They fell for it again. Lucy in the football.
Liberal media.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Not just liberal media, but especially the New York Times. Remember, this is the same newspaper that wrongly printed Iran had abandoned its nuclear program. Just remember that. They're always wrong. The New York Times is always wrong about everything in the national security area. Everything. They're never right. Hey, thank you, Ray.
I still hope to find the person that leaked this.
Oh, that Ratcliffe, the director of national intelligence, reminded everyone it's crime. But I'm more concerned that Durham get his work done. I want to know about the attempt to take out the president. There was a coup attempt in January and December when he became president. It was a quiet coup. Didn't use guns. It used lawyers and leaks and unmasking. I want the details on that. Time to tell you about ReliefFactor.com and Honorbound Coffee. All right, I did 8 miles after the show yesterday. Oh my gosh! And I was doing work on that run, talking to people about various stories, meet the press, all that stuff. I was slow. It was so hot, but my ReliefFactor.com keeps me in the game. Just took it. If you're watching on TV, it's so easy to open, so easy to take. And my coffee isn't even that lukewarm today. It's hot coffee. Coach Meyer will be happy for me. Coach Meyer, listen, he's usually done with his workout, and I don't know what he does all day long. Guy works like a banshee. He's always amused that my coffee is lukewarm. Well, it's not today, but I took my ReliefFactor.com, and I tell you 3 times a day. I take it in the first hour. I remind you 2 more times. Do take it. But I wanted to emphasize, because we're talking about troops this morning, there are a lot of troops in harm's way in Afghanistan, Iraq, and around the world. There are a lot of sailors on ships, a lot of Air Force people deployed in places like Djibouti and Guam and all around the world. Their families are making it without their loved ones at home. There are a bunch of groups that work hard to support military families. There are a bunch of groups that work hard to support wounded families, like the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund or America's Fund. Lots of great groups. They all need help. The folks who started Relief Factor started Honor Bound Coffee in order that you can be part of helping them. All you have to do is get your coffee from Honor Bound Coffee. There are 4 different blends, 4 different grinds. That means 16 choices. There are 16 wonderful cups of coffee. And if you get your coffee from Honor Bound Coffee, it's delivered to your door. You don't have to make a trip to the market for it. Honor Bound Coffee, every dollar of profit, every one, goes to support those groups that support the American military family. So there is no reason for you not to be using Honor Bound Coffee. All you have to do is go one time and subscribe. And if you're like me and you drink it every morning, you will be happier for having done so. Coming right back with Drucker, we'll talk about this non-story story. Don't go anywhere. Good Hugh Hewitt show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Okay, guys, I got to do a couple of spots for Atlanta.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You're invited to listen.
According to court papers that were filed yesterday, Joe Biden appears to have personally raised the idea of
Pick up the Saturday's part again because you glitched out your internet.
Potentially violating the...
Do it again, it glitched out again.
If the media was worth a damn, pardon my language, I'm in a bad mood today. If they were worth a damn, there'd be a big front page story that reveals facts, like this one. The then FBI director, James Comey, acknowledged during a meeting that involved Sally Yates, possibly Susan Rice, that General Flynn's conversation with Sergei Kislyak his conversations, quote, appear legit, according to the federal court filing out of Washington, D.C. that were just revealed. This was revealed in handwritten notes that were prepared by this disgraced ex-FBI agent, Peter Strzok. Flynn's lawyers are referring to this as stunning and exculpatory evidence. But of course, now the government has dropped the case, dropped the charges. But listen to this. This is where it matters. A partially blacked out copy of Peter Strzok's notes is attached to the filing and includes a mention that appears to say, this is scrawled, this is like chicken scratch, but it appears to say VP : Logan Act.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Folks, I'm talking to my friend Larry Elder, who has produced a glorious film called Uncle Tom, UncleTom.com. Larry Elder, who are some of the figures that appear in this film? I mentioned a couple of them a moment ago.
You mentioned Carol Swain. She was a law professor at Vanderbilt in Tennessee. Got all sorts of grief because she, among other things, opposed race-based preferences, argued that they actually hurt black people because you're putting them on a track much faster than they could handle. They would have been perfectly fine at a lesser competitive school, but because we decided that there ought to be some sort of racial mixture at a given school, whether the kid can do the work or not. We've also got Herman Cain in there. Herman Cain was, of course, maligned as an Uncle Tom and a sellout when he ran, because by definition, any black person who's a Republican is an Uncle Tom and a sellout. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party, which, by the way, we go over in the film, I think, pretty thoroughly. The Democratic Party, of course, is the party of slavery. Democrats unanimously oppose the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment.
Larry, I just want to interrupt. When people say stuff like what you're saying right now, I always have to hit pause and say, nobody knows this. It can't be right that the Democrats are the party of slavery and the KKK. And in your film, you cover a lot of this. Another reason people need to go see Uncle Tom, the film.
This movie was about, one of my liberal friends saw it and said, I'm sorry.
I think a lot of people are trying to understand what his view of memorializing the Confederacy is and the proper place of the Confederate flag. So a couple questions. One, does President Trump believe that it was a good thing that the South lost the Civil War? And then two,
welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. That was Ryan Lizza. Used to be a regular guest on my show when he was with the New Yorker. I'm joined by David Drucker now. David, Ryan is a friend of mine, probably a friend of yours. I think that was a moronic question. What do you think of that question?
Well, it's not a question I would have asked. Now, I didn't hear the rest of the questions that he asked, and it'll be interesting to see which story he produces, because then occasionally I'll ask a very simple question just to see what kind of answer I get. But it is an interesting question that I don't think I would have asked.
Yeah, you're being diplomatic. It's a moronic question.
Yes, I'm being diplomatic.
You're being diplomatic.
I'm being diplomatic in part because that's my role.
But do you think it reflects on the industry? I mean, does it reflect on you and me?
I think, yeah. Look, I have said, and I think we've talked about it on the show, Hugh, that some of the questions that have been asked over the course of the pandemic and everything else, maybe there's going to be a point to it once I see the finished work, so I reserve a little bit of judgment, but, they're not questions I necessarily would have asked. And, I do try to be mindful when I ask questions, whether they're tough, whether they sound simple. I try to make sure there's a point to them and that the subject of the question understands what I'm trying to do with the question. So it'll see what he comes up. We'll see what he comes up with, but I wouldn't have asked the question.
All right, now I want to turn to the New York Times story. I spent a lot of yesterday afternoon and evening on this, and it is my conclusion based upon the best sources that anyone has in town, that the president was not briefed on the allegation of the Russian bounty because senior intelligence officials inside and outside of the White House who were aware of it deemed it unworthy, and his briefer did not brief him on it. That's the bottom line. It's a non-story story, and it's the New York Times again doing the Lucy and the football thing on Charlie Brown's. The disgruntled IC people hold the football, and the New York Times tries to kick it every time and miss every time. David, what do you think is the story after 2 days of chasing their tail?
Well, here's the thing, Hugh. I don't actually know what the story is yet because I have read some conflicting reports. I've also read nuanced reports. Tom Rogan at the Examiner, who's a colleague of mine, who does some really great work on reporting on the intel community and national security, has a really nuanced piece about what might have happened and how this might have all unfolded. And one of the things I've learned on all of this is not to get too far ahead of myself as I try and analyze it. What I like to try and do is take a look at the politics of all of this, because that's something I can do, and I can do it reasonably well. And again, whether the story were to pan out completely or totally not pan out, it's one of those that it's going to have people in their political corners. Voters are going to look at this. They're not going to be sure what to believe, but they're going to say to themselves that either I like the president and this isn't going to change my mind, or I don't like the president and I didn't need this story to make me not like the president.
Agree.
We're all back at square one.
Agree. And I just think they keep trying to bleed him and to throw Russia-Trump into the air to keep the Russia-Trump people alive, but it's not the 10% that are going to decide this election. I think it's 45-45 right now. And the 10%, I think, David, are going to decide it on the economy. If you look at the economy yesterday, new home purchases went up 44% month over month in May. Now, May is traditionally a very good month for home purchases, but people don't buy a home unless they have great confidence in their life. They don't do that. What does that tell you, David Drucker?
Well, it tells me that in May, people were confident that the economy was headed in the right direction. But, now we're on the cusp of July. We've seen significant uptick in infections of the virus across many of the states that were at the forefront of reopening. And regardless of the reason for this, and I think the protests had something to do with it, young people packing into bars seems like they had something to do with it. Let's see how people feel about the economy at the end of July if this sort of thing continues. And I do think that handling of the pandemic and all of the instability that people are dealing with in the United States, and we could talk about schools, whether they reopen or not, I think all of this is going to weigh on voters when they vote. But you tell me what they're going to be thinking about as they vote in the fall, because as I've said before, in February we were talking about impeachment, in March the pandemic, in April a recession, by the end of May it was civil unrest and a discussion about race in America. And so you tell me what the 24-second clock is going to look like.
David, that is so well put. That's exactly it. And if they're talking about how the economy is reopening and flourishing, Trump wins. And if they're talking about how the economy is going down, Trump loses. I mean, this is not hard, but I think it's a 24-second clock. That's brilliant. David M. Drucker on Twitter. I think I'm going to steal that, David. You tell me what's on the 24th. You tell me that in September, and I'll tell you what the election's going to be. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Are we witnessing simply 1968 redux, or is this a far more cynical shell game whereby the left, the institutional left, says we have no way to win the election on policy platforms, so we're going to use violence on the streets, and that's going to be a feint or a dodge? Are these people sincere, Professor, or is this a political play?
Well, it's being aided and abetted by the DNC, and they see it as useful, as a lot of would-be architects of revolution do. They think it's useful to cause chaos or to pressure the blue states not to participate in the recovery or whatever their agenda for the November election. And in that sense, it's a little different. What I see as different from '68 is we didn't have mayors and governors actively resisting help from the federal government and either sympathizing with or appeasing or contextualizing the violence as we do in Seattle and Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Detroit. And the second thing is there was a group of liberals in those days, and they were attacking what they called the new left. They said, we're not part of this. We're not part of, and we don't have that. That is gone. The left has been fused into the party of AOC, the squad, the street. And Joe Biden is an empty vessel in which they plan to put into an agenda once he's elected.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
NASCAR describing it as a garage door pull that was fashioned like a noose. The FBI saying you were not the target of a hate crime and that it had been there at least since last October. When you found that out on Tuesday, Bubba, what was your initial reaction?
I was relieved, just like many others, to know that it wasn't targeted towards me. But it's still frustrating to know that, people are always going to test you and always just going to try to debunk you. And that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around now from saying I'm a fake and all this stuff, and that I reported it when it was news that was brought to me. It was information that was brought to me that was already reported. And so I was just kind of following suit. But all in all, it's another day.
888-971-SAG. All in all, that's another day. You make an accusation that somebody put there because they're racist and I happen to be a driver of color, and it turns out it's not the case. But hey, at the end of the day, it's still a noose, and I'm still a person of color. 15 FBI agents. No, 15. Pull them off the Jimmy Hoffa detail to do this. I mean, honestly. And then he wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't say, I'm embarrassed. My crew chief reported it was a black guy. He had his radar on, that noose radar that black people have, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Bubba gets Don Lemon and defends himself. He doesn't say, isn't this wonderful? See, if a decent man, and I don't know him from Adam, but I can only say a decent man would have said, I am so relieved. If I found something anti-Semitic in my workplace, do you know how relieved I would be to learn it was not, in fact, anti-Semitic at all, that I had misapprehended what it was? Why isn't he relieved for himself, for NASCAR, and for the country? Tell me why. Why does this not indict his character? I would almost pay for somebody who wants to defend his decency to call in now. 1-8-PRAGER-776. 877-243-7776. Leftism makes you a worse human being. Black, white, biracial, L, G, B, T, Q, cisgender, non-gender, transgender, Jew, Christian, atheist, secularist, Mormon, Buddhist. Get it? Whatever you are, leftism makes you worse.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The Dixie Chicks bravely changed their name yesterday to just the Chicks. They're so brave. Boy, they're standing tall, aren't they? And now it's time to reassess America's national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. Last week, Lindsay Parker, editor-in-chief, writes, protesters in San Francisco toppled a statue of the song's composer, Francis Scott Key, a known slaveholder, who once said that African Americans were a distinct and inferior race of people. This week, a student at New York's Urban Assembly School for the Performing Arts refused to sing the Star-Spangled Banner at her virtual graduation ceremony. She told the Wall Street Journal, who evidently was interested in why she would do such a thing, with everything that's happening, she said, if I stand there and sing it, I'm being complicit to a system that has oppressed people of color. Instead, she sang Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is a hymn widely considered to be the black national anthem. That, incidentally, is one of the strong recommendations from this Yahoo article that replace the Star-Spangled Banner, Lift Every Voice and Sing, which incidentally is also a beautiful song.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It was always commonsensical. I always try to back it up with sources. And when you react with a vicious name, that means you're just out of ammo. And I feel bad for you because we're not having the debate. The problems in the black community have very little to do with white racism. I've always said, Eric, if you invented a vaccine to eliminate white racism, it's all gone. Are the major problems in the black community still present? Do we still have 70% of black kids raised without fathers? Yes. Do we still have 25% of young black boys having criminal records living in the inner city that's either having been arrested in jail on parole or on probation? Do we still have in many of our urban high schools a 50% urban dropout rate, and many of the kids, when they do graduate, can't read, write, and compute at grade level? I mean, we're talking about Baltimore, 13 high schools where 0% of kids, 0%, Eric, can do math at grade level. When I raise these issues and you scream at me and call me an Uncle Tom, you're not having a debate that might very well improve the educational prospects.
Morning, Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt on June 30th in the year of the plague 2020 with the best news I could possibly give you on the economy side. You know, unemployment will be out later in the month. I expect it will drop again. I know that there's all this ginned up stories about the viruses everywhere. Yes, it is. A lot of young people are getting it. They fell ill for a week to 10 days, and they're fine. It doesn't kill them. It kills people with 2 or more comorbidities, especially if they're older. It puts some people in the hospital. We have better treatment. The virus is becoming a chronic as opposed to an acute disease, and there are lots more therapies, and we may even get a vaccine. Even when we get a vaccine, by the way, it's not going to work for everyone. Tony Fauci said that yesterday on CNN. I want you to hear this. Cut number 3.
Doubt seriously that any vaccine will ever be 100% protected. The best we've ever done is measles, which is 97 to 98% effective. That would be wonderful if we get there. I don't think we will. I would settle for a 70, 75% effective vaccine, because that would bring you to that level of would be herd immunity level.
Yeah, that means it's just not reproducing wildly throughout. You can get rid of the masks and open people up for inside dining at every table. Meanwhile, Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar went on Good Morning America yesterday to talk about the best therapeutic that we've got, which is the remdesivir. Cut number 2.
Just want to let you know about a really important announcement this morning that President Trump has secured 500,000 courses of treatment of remdesivir, and this through September. This is the drug that, if you're hospitalized, can reduce the length of your stay by a third. And we're working to make with our states to make sure it gets to the hospitals most in need.
So look, as we needed to do in April and May, we shut the country down to gain time to get the therapeutics right. Turns out it's this, and there's some other things coming along, and to create capacity. And as to the capacity, Alex Azar went on State of the Union with Jake Tapper yesterday. Cut number 1.
So, Jake, I want to go back to some of the things you said there, because I want to make sure the American people are reassured about some of the actions of their government and of their health care system. You know, with all respect to the AMA, they don't have the information we have. We literally are on the phone with the hospitals in Arizona, Texas, California, Florida, every day, measuring their PPE supplies and their reserves and making sure that we're there to support them. In Arizona, 15% of hospitalizations inpatient are from COVID. The rest of their capacity is consumed with other hospital uses and elective procedures, and you're going to see governors and hospitals slowing down on elective procedures to make capacity. We will ensure that Americans who need hospital beds have hospital beds. If they need an ICU, they'll have an ICU bed, and if they need a ventilator, they'll have a ventilator, and we'll be able to deploy therapeutics to them to help them through also. It's very important that we rely on data. We're following this at the micro level, the county level, the hospital level.
Mm-hmm. There is a big virus. There is no crisis in capacity. There's a nasty virus. It can kill people who are susceptible to it. It has killed yesterday, I believe the number was 338 people died from it yesterday. It's bad. It is significantly less bad than it was in May. We are significantly better prepared than when the Chinese allowed it to escape from Wuhan. The science is advancing every day, and that reflects in the economy. So the big business story of the day yesterday is the market. And by the way, this is brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. They are the best mortgage lenders in America with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. Go to 888-888-1172 if you need a mortgage. If you need to get money, you want to reduce the number of years, you want to get cash out. If you're a senior citizen and you want a reverse mortgage, you have to be at least 62. It's got to be on your principal residence. You'll never make another mortgage payment again, and you'll get cash out. It's just an actuarial calculation. But our friends at Sierra Pacific, our friends at AndrewandTodd.com will help you through it. You can trust Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. 888-888-1172. Best news of the day from CNN Business. A stronger than expected 44.3% jump in pending home sales in May. That means Americans went back to buy houses in May. This is from National Mortgage News, not exactly what every American reads every morning, right? But I'm working on what story matters that the rest of the networks don't tell you about. This is actually the story that affects real people. Not made up news from the New York Times about fake intel that doesn't exist and is not widely believed, but real news about what people are doing in America. New home sales rose more than expected in May, with record low mortgage rates pulling buyers back into a housing market that froze up during the pandemic. Now, we're still in the pandemic, but it froze for a while. Purchases of single-family houses climbed 16.6% to 676,000 on an annualized basis. The median forecast had been for an annual basis of 640,000. It's now 676,000. Home builders are welcoming buyers back after social distancing rules across much of the U.S. kept them on the sideline. A growing share of buyers are opting for new homes because existing home listings are in short supply. Record low interest rates have made the properties affordable to a larger share of buyers. The fact that we're reaching the levels that we are in a pandemic and a recession is unbelievable, said Ali Wolf, chief economist at Myers Research. Low rates have tilted the equation towards some buyers actually being able to afford a new home. In a sign of recent strength, the annualized pace of new home selling in May, before the start of construction, was about 184,000, which is the highest in 3 months. So they started in America, 184,000 homes got started building. Do you know that building a home creates 4 jobs? Every house that gets started creates 4 jobs. That's 600,000 jobs right there. Purchases in the South increased 15.2% to a 7-month high. They jumped 29% in the West. All right, so people know the virus is out there, but young people who are buying homes for growing families, their starter home, their second home, or their third home for life, they're back in the marketplace. And they should be, because the interest rates are so freaking low. Because let me check the 10-year Treasury again. I want to make sure I got it right. Yep, 0.64%. This is why you go to andrewandtodd.com. This is why you call 888-888-1172. This is why you get in. Because the market tells you the truth about the virus. It is not an existential threat to humanity. It's a problem. It's a problem that we are dealing with. Now, I want to go back to the Louisiana abortion law decision. The Supreme Court struck down the Louisiana law by 5-4. 4 members of the court would have reversed the decision of 5 years ago over a Texas law that does almost the same thing. 5 years ago, John Roberts voted to strike down the Texas law. Yesterday, the Chief Justice voted to uphold the Texas law. I have just tweeted out an excellent Red State article on the Chief Justice and stare decisis. Bring him a case on the underlying doctrine of Casey, and I believe he will join the dissenters in overturning Casey. He is not going to overturn a decision of the court from 5 years ago, even though he dissented in it, because that leads, and he's looking ahead, by the way. What if Biden wins, and God forbid one of the 5 conservative dies? All right? If Biden wins and one of the 5 conservative dies, do you want every bit of jurisprudence to be overturned that they upheld, that they issued in the last 4 years of Trump? Because if John Roberts had voted the other way yesterday, that would be the excuse for the new court, the liberal court, to throw out everything that the center-right court, it's not a conservative court, it's a center-right court. That would be their excuse. You have to think long-term when it comes to the Supreme Court. So the Chief Justice is sitting there saying, bring me Casey and we'll talk about it. I am not going to give a weapon to every future liberal court to strike down every decision that a center-right court issued. And that decision tree includes Citizens United, Hobby Lobby, and by the end of this week, I believe it will include Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when those cases come down and they're big conservative wins, remember that the Chief Justice's position today, that you don't reverse the same case within 5 years, applicable to a Louisiana law that was near and dear to a lot of pro-life hearts, but not a sweeping case, not a Casey case, will save, or at least work to save, he'll be able to cite himself in those conferences. He'll say, look what the doctrine of stare decisis is. It is not throw out the cases within 5 years. I think the chief knows what he's doing. I think conservative critics still hate him over the Obamacare, which was still one of the wisest decisions I've seen in the 35 years I've been practicing con law. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I saw the first video that went viral, but I didn't know until I watched Garantham's video that wasn't the only thing you did that day, and that was the second weapon that you retrieved from rioters who had broken into a patrol car. So tell us everything that happened prior to that, and then the second incident.
All right, so we're on the corner of the street watching, and I'm holding security for my team, and I see these police vehicles that are being destroyed, and the first thing I thought when I saw them was, hey, there's probably AR-15 patrol rifles in there, which there honestly should be. The police do need them. They have more than enough cause to have them. So I told myself I need to keep an eye on this situation because this could turn bad very fast. So it did, gun comes out of the front passenger side, and I yelled gun, put my team immediately in a safe position and told them not to move. That guy fired several rounds into those vehicles and then went into a doorway and took cover. At that time, when he was firing, I was already moving on him with my drawing my weapon and coming up at him.
But you had a handgun. All you had was a handgun, and in the first incident that most people haven't seen, the rider who took the weapon was actually firing rounds off from that rifle, from that carbine, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
And who were they firing at? Was anybody hurt?
No, the second that rifle came out, someone was yelling, clear the block, and everyone kind of saw that this guy had a rifle, and he fired into the vehicle. But he fired in the vehicle. Everyone had split and went different ways down the street, so there's no one there.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I've been doing a lot of publicity for the movie Uncle Tom. And I had an interview with the BBC radio. After whom military bases have been named. Surely you protest that. I said, I'm indifferent. You're indifferent? There's a major who happens to be black who's deeply offended. I said, he can be offended, he cannot be offended. I don't care. Ask me about whether I am angry at the fact that 3% of the kids at my former high school can do math at grade level. Why am I never getting asked about the 14 people shot and killed in Chicago weekend before last, over 100 wounded? Ask me about the 50% urban dropout rate in high school. Ask me about something important. Were we to rename all of these military bases, were we to take down all the statues you find offensive, what would be the result? Would there be a decline in the percentage of people that feel that race and racism is a major problem in America? Really?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. I want to go back in preparation of talking to Admiral Stavridis in the next segment. Let me remind you, next hour is the Heritage Foundation hour. All you want is to go to hughforheritage.com to find all the ways that you can participate in renewing the intellectual life of America. hughforheritage.com. I urge you to get, by the way, 9 ways that socialism will morally bankrupt America. That's available at hughforheritage.com. Also, while you're online, visit hughhewitt.com and click on the banner provocatively titled UncleTom.com. That will take you to SalemNow.com. That will take you to Larry Elder's new movie. It's the director, Justin Malone's movie, but the executive producer is our colleague, Larry Elder, who has for 30 years been on the air taking the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune aimed at anyone who dares to be a conservative libertarian African American. And Larry began this project a long time ago, before the protests that followed the murder of George Floyd. It just happened to debut right now. They've been working on it a long time. He interviewed every major African American, black intellectual and activist that he could find from the center right. And he put them all in this
So, Jake, I want to go
amazing, remarkable movie, Uncle Tom, which has been just critically acclaimed, and it's just selling like hotcakes. People are watching it and watching it and watching it and watching it again. Make sure you use my name, Hugh, to get the discount. Uncle Tom. It's really the worst thing you can call an African American. And Larry Elder's been called it so many times, it just bounces off him. I've done enough shows with Larry, enough public events with Larry, bounce off his back. But Larry is always willing to go into the fight about why he's a conservative and why he believes in free enterprise, why he believes America is the best place to be a minority anywhere in the world. Larry will tell you that. He talks to Jesse Peterson. He talks to all sorts of people. You just got to go to UncleTom.com to get that. Don't forget as well, Job Creators Network has out there the flattenthefear.com website. Very urgently needed right now, flattenthefear.com, because a lot of people are afraid by the news spread of the virus. I mean, the virus is going everywhere. The G variant, apparently more contagious than any other variant of the virus previously known. But the people are getting sick. The median age is down to 36, and they're not dying. Most are not even being hospitalized. Those that are hospitalized are recovering. We still lose a few hundred Americans every day. It's tragic. Like car crashes. 36,000 people, I believe, a year are killed in car crashes in America. That's tragic, every one of them. I know people who've died in car crashes. I know what it does. When someone dies from COVID, it's the same thing. It's tragic. It's a loss. It's lives that ought not to have ended when they ended. But we're doing much better. We are much better prepared. There ought not to be panic. There ought not to be panic mongering. Now, the story I'll talk about with Admiral Stavridis after the break is about the alleged Russian bounties on Americans. If there are such bounties, I believe they can be traced to February 2018, when Russian paramilitaries attacked American forces in Syria. 3 months later, the New York Times wrote this: the artillery barrage was so intense that the American commandos dived into foxholes for protection, emerging covered in flying dirt and debris to fire back at a column of tanks advancing under heavy shelling. It was the opening salvo in a nearly 4-hour assault in February by around 500 pro-Syrian government forces, including Russian mercenaries. In the end, 200 to 300 of the attacking fighters were killed. The others retreated under merciless airstrikes from the United States, returning later under a truce, by the way, to retrieve their battlefield dead. None of the Americans at the small outpost in eastern Syria, about 40 at the end of the firefight, were harmed. This occurred on February 7th, The Russians attempted to overrun an American outpost in Syria. They were decisively defeated, and up to 300 of them were killed. So some Russians have a big grudge. Now, you probably haven't heard that before. I've talked about this battle before on the show. I believe that whatever intel that has shown up in the Intel River that runs through everyone's daily material at the White House included people who bear grudges. But the president was not briefed. The New York Times got it wrong again. Stay tuned, America. Admiral Stavridis is next.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Heritage Foundation.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Did you see this coming? Would you have predicted a large cave-in to an anti-religious force such as the left? Or is this somewhat surprising to you?
Yes, I did. In fact, I won't bore you with it, Dennis, but I actually wrote my dissertation on this at Michigan State University some couple decades ago. I could see this fact. A low view of Scripture combined with a high view of self is not a good formula for freedom. I'll repeat that. A low view of Scripture with a high view of self is always a formula for disaster and bondage and slavery and brokenness rather than repentance and freedom. Another way to look at it is Greek mythology, the story of Narcissus. Narcissism is always suicidal. And the more we gaze into the pool infatuated with ourselves, the more we displace God from where he rightfully belongs in our lives and commit the original sin and declare ourselves to be as God, the more we slip into the pool and subject ourselves to cultural suicide. And that is indeed what's taking place in the evangelical church right now. And, you've nailed it. It's a new religion. It's the religion of holy wokeness, as I said earlier, and the white guilt cult as opposed to the Christian religion of repentance, confession, and being born again.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
This is the governor of New York to watch Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo. Tom loves best. It is one of the grossest examples of journalistic nonsense. Oh, you're so great. Oh, no, you're so great. Here's the CNN primetime host interviewing the governor of New York, the brothers, and it's like two frat boys comparing notes on Friday night in the frat house, playing some beer pong. It's unreal that CNN would it's such a it's just gross. But here's Cuomo last night on CNN with a message to the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis.
I say to them all, look at the numbers. You played politics with this virus and you lost. You told the people of your state and you told the people of this country, White House, don't worry about it. Just open up, go about your business. This is all democratic hyperbole. Oh, really?
Turn it off. Stop
now
it.
you see 27
Played
states with the numbers
politics
going.
with this virus and you lost. Oh, really? What was the race that Florida lost compared to New York? Let me remind this arrogant, smug, sanctimonious jerk of a governor that it was his mandate that nursing homes in New York have to accept COVID-19 sick patients that led to the deaths of thousands of seniors in New York's nursing homes.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the
Eric.com. In these crazy times, boy, folks, you need to see this film. Larry, let's talk about what's happening in the country right now. Speaking as a black man, what do you say to people in my audience who, some of whom are tremendously confused by this, and I think it's because of white guilt?
It's a combination of white guilt, a combination of Trump derangement syndrome, and a combination of, I think, coronavirus cabin fever, because people have been locked up for a couple of months. So it's sort of a perfect storm. And I must also say a bunch of young people have been indoctrinated by what I call the axis of indoctrination, that is Hollywood, academia, and media, that have told them that they are victims, that racism and sexism and whatever ism you want remain major factors in American life, when none of these things is significant anymore. Racism has never been a more insignificant factor in success in American life. I thought when Obama got elected in 2008, we put a fork in the idea that there was institutional racism. And you're looking at all these things that are going on right now in America. In Baltimore in 2015, when Freddie Gray died in police custody, he's the one whose head hit that van. You're talking about a city that's about 50% black. The mayor was black. The number one and number two people running the police department were black. The state attorney that brought the charges against the 6 officers was black. 3 of the 6 officers was black. The judge before whom 2 of the officers tried their cases, by the way, and found them not guilty, was black. All of city council was Democrat, majority black. The U.S. attorney at the time, Loretta Lynch, was black. And the president of the United States was black. And we're talking about institutional racism.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. At least once a week, I get to hear that song that always makes me smile. It's the intro music for Admiral James Stavridis, retired United States Navy, former Allied Supreme Commander of NATO, former head of Southern Command, now overseeing defenses in Florida, I believe. Admiral, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, although the coronavirus seems to be breaching our defensive walls in Florida. We're going to redouble our efforts down here.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I know that the median age has dropped to 36. I talked about this with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press on Sunday. I believe Americans have intuited the key issue, which is people who are my age, 64 and older, have got to be very careful. But young people have intuited this isn't really going to cripple me if I go out, and we're going to live with this bifurcated, split-level disease is what I'm calling it, Admiral. What do you make of my assessment?
I agree with you. I think that this is turning into a generational argument. And frankly, what we need is the young people to sign up to protect those of us like you and I who are on the wrong side of 50. And until they do that, we're going to continue to see deaths rise. And I think the simplest thing, as in the now immortal words of my state senator, Marco Rubio, wear a damn mask. It's not that hard.
I go out and I run after every show, and I do wear my kerchief, my bandana, but the runners outside are just not going for it, Admiral. I don't know that we can get it back, and I put it down to the mass demonstrations. I believe that when the murder of George Floyd rightly triggered outrage, that millions of people in the streets sent a message as well, which is, now game over. We've given up on flattening the curve. I really believe that's what happened.
I think these are two bad things that have come together to create a worse thing. And the worst thing is the fact that our death curves are now going up, whereas almost everywhere else in the developed world, they're going down. We have got to take strong action. It starts with wearing masks. I'm in the beaches of Jacksonville. Our mayor yesterday mandated masks in the city of Jacksonville. It's going to require more local officials to take this in hand and take the relatively simple steps we need to not only flatten the curve, but to bring this thing down.
Yep. Now, Admiral, I want to change to the major story of the day. 2 days ago, the Russian bounty story broke in the New York Times. I spent yesterday talking to, I don't know if you did, but I did, senior White House and non-White House officials. The bottom line, the president was not briefed on this because his CIA briefer did not deem the intelligence verified, and not one agency outside of the government believed it was verified to the level to warrant presidential alert, and the intel people inside the White House shared that assessment. Now, I don't know what you've learned about it, and please tell us, but generally speaking, you know Mike Morrell, I know Mike Morrell, you know how the president's briefing works. Sometimes they read it. President Obama was a reader. Sometimes they get it personally. Vice President Cheney, President Bush, President Trump are listeners. If you're not briefed on it, it's not in the river going through your head. Have I accurately described the intel process?
Yes, you have, and certainly I have a lot of personal familiarity with the presidential daily brief. When I was Secretary Rumsfeld's senior military assistant, I sat in every single morning while Secretary Rumsfeld was given the precise same brief that the president was receiving. That went on for over 2 years. As the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, I had regular access to it. So I'm very familiar with the process. I think you've described it accurately. It does vary from president to president. People do absorb information in different ways. I will say this, Hugh, and I think you'd agree with this. The report, if true, is extremely shocking. And I think, I know, had I been Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and in charge of that mission in Afghanistan and had seen that intelligence at whatever level, I would have sent that like a rocket to my boss, the Secretary of Defense at that time, Secretary Gates. And I'm reasonably sure Secretary Gates would have immediately asked the president to convene a National Security Council meeting at the highest level to deal with it, because, again, if true, and it certainly has the earmarks of the GRU on it, if true, this requires a pretty significant response, in my opinion.
You and I agree, but the if true part is the key predicate there. My sources tell me they don't believe it's true, and that you don't take the president that which they do not believe to be true, and my sources are really good. Now, I do believe there's motive. The motive is, I go back, and I'm sure you remember, in February of 2018, 300 Russian paramilitaries came over the hill in Syria, and none of them went home. In one of the most vicious firefights of the Syrian campaign, Russian paramilitaries were wiped out by the combined American Special Forces and Air Forces brought to bear on their ill-intentioned and really ill-conceived attack on an American outpost. We wiped them out. I would assume, Admiral, that there are some Russians who lost brothers and fathers and cousins and friends in that attack, and they would like nothing more than to get some payback. Is that a fair assumption?
I think it is, and I'll take you even further back. Go back 30 years ago, Charlie Wilson's war in Afghanistan. The United States is supplying the Taliban with surface-to-air missiles, which turned the tide, frankly, and managed to shoot down many, many Russian aircraft. When I went to Moscow as Supreme Allied Commander, I had a conversation with the last general to come out of Afghanistan from the Russians. And he made a point of saying to me, you Americans have Russian blood on your hands. So sure, you can go back in history and find plenty of motive for this, although the incident you described correctly in 2018, I would say was squarely self-defense. Those were mass troops coming at U.S. Special Forces. That's a very different situation than putting individual bounties on the heads of American soldiers. Very different in both cases.
I'm just saying that they would have motive. Some people in the Russian military and the GRU would have motive. And they might also have motive just to drive us out of Afghanistan. And there might be within America people who want us to stay in Afghanistan, for whom this story would be convenient as the president edges towards leaving. And so I think there's motive to falsely over-interpret data. And I always think one rule, we did not interpret correctly weapons of mass destruction data in 2001. You've sat in on these briefings. I'm sure you've heard how people, I used to do it in justice, the level of certainty is a finely tuned needle that people dial up and they dial down. I'm sure, Admiral, you've heard this like 1,000 times, right? People hedge their bets. So the question is, if we really thought Russians were putting bounties on Americans, would it not be incumbent upon the director of CIA and the DNI to go to the president and say, Mr. President, they're killing Americans. Putin is killing Americans. Would they not be obliged to send up a red flare?
Absolutely. And so I think one of the questions that we have to ask at this point, if we take the president at his word that he was completely unaware of this, is did his team let him down here? And I, for one, as I look at all of this and look at the reporting, I would be asking the question, if I were the president and had not been informed of this, why was I not informed, even if the intelligence was not fully baked, Hugh? Because it's so explosive and it is of such high potential to create exactly the situation we're seeing now. So you kind of can't have it both ways and say, well, the intel isn't really that good, we shouldn't have brought it to the president, and say space there that I think needs to be explored, frankly.
That's what I explored yesterday with an adamant comeback to me from serious sources. No, it was not serious. It's not believed. And if Gina Haspel is called to testify on it, John Ratcliffe wasn't there at the time. She will say it's not good intel. It's not confirmed. If we buy my assumption, Admiral, just buy my assumption for a second, what should the New York Times do with a story where it's alleged that it is good intel? What should they do?
Well, I think the New York Times, like any news outlet, does have an obligation to print only what they can source from multiple levels. And I think the New York Times has sourced this well, because that's the standard of journalism that they generally adhere to. You can have the conversation about whether they should have brought the story forward or not after, in my opinion, we do get, at least in front of Congress, the senior officials, unlike you and I, who actually saw all of that intelligence, who had to make those hard decisions. I think that's a fair set of questions to ask. Here, I look to the Congress to take a look at this, and I think you're going to see that in the next few days.
Now, Admiral, I've got an elephant's memory for media screw-ups, and you probably have a much better memory than I do for both screw-ups and right stories. They published a story during the W years that Iran had abandoned its nuclear program. Remember the intelligence finding that made its way into the public? Iran has abandoned its nuclear program. It had not abandoned its nuclear program. So I am deeply suspicious of stories about what the intelligence community has concluded and not concluded on the basis of that which profoundly impacted American policy. Do you recall that?
I do. And you know, more to the point, I suppose, we can all recall the reporting of Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons program, which of course turned out to be wrong. And I think it's important to make 2 points here. One is the point you made earlier, that intelligence it's not an on and off switch of accurate, false. If it were, it wouldn't be intelligence, it would be factual or not factual. What intelligence is a best guess estimate, and you dial it up and you dial it down. And part of this, of course, is the intelligence community is quite large. There are 17 different entities in it. There are going to be competing opinions. I saw that consistently. So point one, there's a certain mist, a fog of intelligence. We talk about the fog of war. There's a fog of intelligence that is a fact of doing business. Secondly, there's a difference between lying and being wrong. And
agreed.
I don't think anybody here is out to lie. I think that some people are getting it right and some are getting it wrong. And so I'd like to know more before I render final judgment on where we're going.
And Admiral, you just told me something I didn't know, and I could spend, and we may spend future segments on this. Would you take the last minute and a half to go back to those daily briefings that you sat in on for the SecDef and kind of explain to the audience what the briefer does? Because people, you know, Mike Morrell explained this to me at length once, and I think it's fascinating. I've never sat in on one of those. I've only been on AG briefings. What is that briefer doing?
It's different for every principal. And so with some principals, the briefer comes in and doesn't even open the book and simply starts talking, goes back and forth, and it can be very challenging and at times confrontational. And Secretary Rumsfeld, who is a master of going back and challenging assumptions, it would be very much a conversation. With other principals, the briefer is expected to come into the room and simply sit quietly while the principal flips through the book, focuses on things that interest him or her, ask for a little more background or local color on this. And then finally, I'm aware of and have been in briefings surrounding the presidential daily brief, in which the principal is simply absorbing the information, really has nothing to add to the conversation, says thank you very much, and excuses the briefer at the end. So frankly, it is across that spectrum. The best principals are the ones who have read it in advance and are willing to have that conversational learning experience, so they get kind of the best of both worlds, Hugh.
Admiral James Stavridis, as always, invaluable conversation. Thank you, Admiral. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
What is your response to the so-called national anthem issue, Trish?
You know what? It's so wrong. It's misplaced, and it's very hypocritical. That's what I would say, Seb. Look, it's not an easy song to sing. Trust me. I mean, the range is all over the place. And, you know, this has been debated actually in music circles for years. I mean, I heard decades ago about singers wanting to have America the Beautiful be our national anthem because, you know, you didn't have somebody really messing up the high note at the end. But when that high note is sung well, it can be pretty darn glorious, right? Because it's a pretty spectacular song and it conjures up such, I think, a feeling of strength. It turns out now that the composer had slaves. So that's what everybody's upset about. So many of our founding fathers, of course, had slaves. And I think it's hard for people to kind of interpret with today's, reality, right? What happened historically. Should we change our national anthem because Francis Scott Key was a slaveholder? That's what they're saying we should do. But here's where it gets really nutty, Seb. They want to change it to America the Beautiful. Another great song, by the way, as I said, and one that's been talked about a lot. That was actually, the lyrics were written by a woman, Catherine Lee Bates, back in 1893. So I guess the PC police would be happy that it's a woman. But if you look at those lyrics, for goodness sakes, they're talking about alabaster cities. And then the ending with the 1893 language says, till nobler men keep once again thy whiter jubilee. Trust me, somebody's going to get upset at that, right?
You know it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I was so absorbed in my conversation with Admiral Stavridis about this alleged report that I neglected to tell you, relieffactor.com. I promise you to do it every day, and a lot of people rely on me to remind them. I talked to my daughter-in-law the other day, and she has been intermittently taking her Relief Factor, her lower back. She's been doing gardening. They basically have weed heaven where they live. And her back's killing her. I said, you got to do it every day. She said, well, I take it and I forget. And I said, well, you got to do it every day. That means you're not listening to Hugh Hewitt show because I tell you 3 times a day. You can't order it and let it sit on a shelf. You got to take it every morning like I do in the first hour, and then I remind you about it in hour 2 and 3. Now, I was involved with the Admiral, so I neglected to do that, but relieffactor.com. I also got a note yesterday from Jan Janura, my buddy who runs thewildadventure.us. They are almost full, but they still have a couple of spots. And I'm going to be bringing you testimonials this year over the next few weeks of people who go to it. And if you found yourself not going to Europe this summer, but willing to travel in the United States, or you're in Denver or Seattle or someplace that can drive to Montana, or you watched Yellowstone and you would really love to experience the Madison River at the mouth of the Yellowstone National Park, then go on the Wild Adventure, twa.us. Listen to this testimonial.
I'm in Montana. I found my heart again. I came looking for...
Or maybe not.
One fish that Hugh Hewitt caught. Place really for men to come find their hearts. I have...
Let's try a different one because that one is botched. Cut number 2.
Me? Yeah, you. Has been one of the best.
No, that's it screwed up. Never mind. I will just tell you, we will get better ones. They are, they've got a few openings. If you want to have the best week in your life, and you're a guy, it's not for girls, for men. There are 2 categories. If you're under 40, you go to the Young Guns. If you're over 40, you go to the other one. You both get to fish the Madison River. You both have great fellowship, conversation. Best thing to do is visit twa.us. twa.us. I want to go back to something I talked about with the Admiral. It was in 2007 that the New York Times published the article, U.S. finds Iran halted its nuclear arms effort in 2003. A new assessment by American intelligence agencies released Monday concludes that Iran halted its nuclear weapons program in 2003 and that the program remains frozen. That was wrong. It was wrong of the New York Times to publish it. It was wrong by the intelligence community to come to that conclusion. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It was leaked in order to tie George W. Bush's hands. The intelligence community has a lot of lefties in it. Please understand, it is divided like the rest of the country. And so when you see a leak like this week's leak that the Russian bounty program exists and was briefed to the president, understand there are a lot of people who will lie to the New York Times, and the New York Times will publish whatever they are told. They are a sieve through which the IC attempts to manipulate the news of the world. Do not believe it because you read it in the New York Times. On this stuff, they are simply wrong. The president was not briefed because the intelligence community does not have high confidence in the story that the Russians have a bounty on American soldiers. If they come to that conclusion, you can count on the Trump doctrine, which is if you kill an American, he will attempt to kill you. C.E.G. Soleimani. C.E.G. Iraqi Shia militiamen. C.E.G. al-Baghdadi. If you're captured, he'll try and get you home. See 20 plus hostages he brought home. But if you screw with an American, he's like Lord Palmerston. All right, the American interests. We have friends and allies. They can change, but American interests never change. And for Trump, the interest is in American lives. And it's very clear. And everybody gets it. So if the Russians are running a bounty program, there will be payback. But if they're not, we're not going to go to war with Russia over some intelligence community never Trumper with TDS, like the quote whistleblower and the whole Ukrainian nightmare. That was TDS afflicted Obama holdovers. And you'll never persuade me other than that. And if Adam Schiff says something, believe the opposite. All right, that's simple. If Adam Schiff tells you X happened, then not X happened. Adam Schiff lies all the time. Please understand that. New York Times doesn't lie, it just publishes whatever they're told because they like scoops. So they're a vacuum cleaner. They just pick up whatever comes their way. They don't make this stuff up. They're told this stuff. But there are lots of people in the intelligence community who lie, and there are a lot of people on Adam Schiff's staff who lie, and Adam Schiff lies. So just don't believe it. The Heritage Hour is coming up, America. We'll talk about the Supreme Court. We'll talk about this story. We'll talk about lots more with the experts from the place that prepares the briefs that you ought to believe in, the Heritage Foundation. Go to HughForHeritage.com. Come right back for Hour 3 of today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Huniverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.huniverse.com.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life.
If you think of it, it's 12 guys. I heard it on the Hugh Hewitt show.
Came together to share their lives.
Life-changing, eye-opening, almost impossible to describe.
And then God shows up.
Really, finding my heart, finding my soul.
Set myself free. You're kidding! No.
The Big Adventure.
The Big Adventure.
The Wild Adventure.
Whatever it is.
Oh, it's a manly man's experience. It really is.
I'm 60, and if I'd had this knowledge at age 30, how would my life be different?
I don't have all the answers, and it's really important for me not to be distracted.
It took me and it took others to places that alone we could.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote? You house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga. Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom.
Bedouin.
Bootlicker.
Black white supremacist.
Chucking and jiving.
House Negro.
Coon.
Uncle Tom.
Coon.
I have a Coon Award over there. Coon of the Year Award. Most black people
Son,
don't believe
Josh
that
Breen.
other blacks
You look
can be
familiar.
independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist.
Racial. Racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think
Or is it because I'm black? America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No, our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
A dominant theme of everything that I write and broadcast is behavior matters, not thoughts. You judge people by their thoughts? That's what the left does, by the way. That is what the left does. This is all a product of the denial of reality. Oh my God, what Jimmy Kimmel said, that is so disgusting. Why? Because the question is not, was it disgusting? The question is, was it true? What is a normal heterosexual male supposed to think about a girl in a bikini and high-heel shoes under a waterfall? What a lovely bikini. Wonder where she got those high heels? Where'd you get your PhD that you find it so disgusting? What women's studies program taught you that this is disgusting? Now, is it a problem? It sure is. Male sexuality is a problem. That is entirely correct. By the way, female emotions are a problem too. Both sexes have big battles with their natures. If you know one college that has taught that to its students, or high school, the odds are, if it exists, it is a profoundly religious school. Most religious schools are worthless, unfortunately.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
According to court papers that were filed yesterday, Joe Biden appears to have personally raised the idea of investigating Michael Flynn for potentially violating the obscure, never-used Logan Act when he talked to the Russian ambassador at the time. These were previously sealed documents. If the media was worth a damn, pardon my language, I'm in a bad mood today. If they were worth a damn, there'd be a big front page story that reveals facts, like this one. The then FBI director, James Comey, acknowledged during a meeting that involved Sally Yates, possibly Susan Rice, that General Flynn's conversation with Sergei Kislyak his conversations, quote, appear legit, according to the federal court filing out of Washington, D.C. that were just revealed. This was revealed in handwritten notes that were prepared by this disgraced ex-FBI agent, Peter Strzok. Flynn's lawyers are referring to this as stunning and exculpatory evidence. But of course, now the government has dropped the case, dropped the charges. But listen to this. This is where it matters. A partially blacked out copy of Peter Strzok's notes is attached to the filing and includes a mention that appears to say, this is scrawled, this is like chicken scratch, but it appears to say VP : Logan Act.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
because I like to beat up on Steelers fans. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Doing well, Hugh. It's good to be back with my favorite Browns fan.
You know, are you ever going to wear any Steelers gear so I can at least abuse your choice of wardrobe?
I should have worn my Steelers jersey. I've got the football behind me there. So.
That doesn't count. We don't want a shot of that. Rob, there's a lot to cover. I was just talking with Admiral Stavridis about the Russian bounty story. I'll come back to that. Let's start with the Supreme Court. I am not nearly as upset as many conservatives are by the Chief Justice's concurring opinion. What is your assessment? What does the Heritage Foundation think about yesterday?
We are certainly disappointed with the court's ruling on this. I understand that there are those conservatives who are taking the long game view, like you, thinking that this is perhaps not the best case to rule on the issue of abortion, and maybe there's a future case that will have a better outcome for the issue that pro-life Americans care about. However, Hugh, I will say that in this particular case, I spoke to Jeff Landry, the Attorney General in Louisiana, when the case was argued, and I did feel that they had a strong argument going into it. So it was certainly disappointing to see that Chief Justice Roberts took a different position than he did just 5 years ago in a similar case.
Yeah, his argument was, for the benefit of the audience, I was a dissenter 5 years ago. Now I'm in the majority because of the doctrine of stare decisis. And I think, Rob, I want to see if I can persuade you about this, and maybe you can persuade Heritage. I think he's laying down a marker. If, God forbid, any of the 5 center-right judges die during a Biden presidency and is replaced by a leftist, as would inevitably happen, Roberts' opinion will stand as an argument that we ought not to reverse recently decided cases like Hobby Lobby and I hope Our Lady of Guadalupe. In other words, I think the chief is playing a long game and trying to build a wall against precipitous reversing of long arriving, for example, public employee union cases.
I do think that there's a factor that's going into his thinking with regard to that, Hugh. And I think that there's another factor, which is he's taking a view of the court as an institution and him as the Chief Justice needing to play a role. However, that doesn't mean that conservatives are going to be pleased with him. In the last 12 days, he's had 3 decisions that go against where conservatives stand on issues from DACA to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and now this case out of Louisiana. So, well, I certainly understand his long-term thinking on this, and perhaps a future case that could be decided with those liberal justices. I just have a hard time. This was a hard-fought nomination that President Bush had. And certainly on numerous occasions now, Chief Justice Roberts has disappointed conservatives. And I think it's one of those factors when conservatives turn out for a president, we know from experience that this is one of those issues that they vote on. And I think that, Hugh, if there's one lesson that we've learned here, it's that the legislature, our Congress, needs to take tough votes on some of these issues and solve some of these issues before they ever get to the court.
Well, hey, we agree on that, but we also have to look at those 5 that you talked about. There is the Obamacare decision, which in retrospect was the reason that the United States Senate went for the Republicans in 2014. If they had overturned Obamacare in 2012, I don't think that would have happened in 2014. There is the DACA decision, which I'm actually comfortable with because I believe the administrative record was a Jeff Sessions nightmare. I still think Jeff Sessions were living with the consequences of a badly run Department of Justice in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. The decision on the 1964 Civil Rights Act is a Gorsuch decision with which the Chief Justice joined. There is a good argument by Sean Trendy that the Chief Justice joined that opinion in order to assign it to Neil Gorsuch, because otherwise it would have been Gorsuch and Ruth Bader Ginsburg assigning the opinion. As for the abortion case, there's the long game. What matters this week, I will give up defending the Chief Justice if we do not win Our Lady of Guadalupe. I really will, because to me, you got to have priorities. My priority is religious liberty, and he's been very strong on Hobby Lobby, Little Sisters of the Poor. He's been very strong on free speech. And I just think conservatives have got to be careful about calling people suitor when they're not suitor. I'm looking at you, Rob.
Yeah, Hugh, you cut out there for a second, but sorry about
I was saying we've got to be careful about calling people David Souter who are not David Souter. I just don't think the Chief Justice is David Souter.
Right, right. And we should also talk about the good decision yesterday on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I mean, this was a decision that I think conservatives generally welcomed because they don't like the structure of the bureau. This was an Elizabeth Warren creation, you might recall, and the court in a decision that sided with the conservative or Republican position held very strong. It's some of these social issues that Chief Justice Roberts seems to be dissenting on. Some of the other ones aren't necessarily as bad. So yes, you're absolutely correct on that point. I would not yet put him in the Souter camp, but given the influence that Republican presidents have had in shaping this court, Hugh, I think you would acknowledge there have been some bad picks over the years, and there have been some disappointments.
Oh, I think David Souter was a disaster. It was Edith Jones or David Souter. Edith Jones is the best circuit court judge in the United States. She could have been on the court for the last 30 years, and we don't have Edith Jones on the court. Everything would be different. But I do look at statutory cases and regulatory cases, very different from constitutional cases. And you just named a constitutional case, the unitary executive. Roberts was with the conservatives in saying the president can fire whoever is in the executive branch unless they serve a fixed term in a regulatory commission. Even that should be revisited, in my view, because there is only one executive branch. I leave that. I want to make sure I get to the new Proud American ebook. What is that, Rob Bluey? It's available at hughforheritage.com.
Well, Hugh, as we talked about last week, our country's under attack, whether it's from Black Lives Matter or Antifa, and these protests, which I think started with some good intentions and peaceful nature, have turned violent. They've taken to tearing down our statues and monuments. And so what we're doing at the Heritage Foundation and with Heritage Action for America is really encouraging Americans to show their pride in country this week as we head into the Independence Day holiday. And so I would just encourage all your listeners to make sure that in their communities, they're doing everything they can to show how much they love this country. And let's talk about all the good things that are happening in America and not focus on all of the negative and all the attention that seems to be paid to these violent protesters. Right here in Washington, D.C., Hugh, there was a great confrontation on Friday night in front of the Lincoln statue at Emancipation Park, and an older generation of African Americans stood up to this younger crowd, this younger mob, to defend that monument. And I thought that was a great example of Americans coming together and hashing out a debate in public and not tearing down what has become known as a very famous statue in Washington.
You know, Rob, I think this is where the Heritage Foundation can really play a great service, which is how do you distinguish saving the Jefferson and Washington memorials from, in my opinion, the necessary renaming of bases that are named for Confederate generals who betrayed their oath to the Union? I do not know how we ended up with 14 bases named for treasonous generals. I just don't, who defended slavery and broke their oaths. So we got to change some things. We got to remove some statues, but not the Jefferson Memorial and not the Washington Monument. My rule is 18th century people are judged by 18th century rules, and the founders and the framers put us on a course to the eradication of slavery, which we got to after a bloody Civil War. 19th century racists do not get any slack, and 20th century racists like Woodrow Wilson get zero slack. I would rename the Wilson Center tomorrow. The man is a stone-cold racist. Democrats don't like to admit it, but I would love to see if you guys came up with a rule for how to judge this. Is that under discussion at the Heritage Foundation?
It certainly is. We've got some great scholars who are evaluating that, including two of my colleagues, Niall Gardner and Joe LeConte, who've done a great piece this week just examining some of the issues. But Hugh, I think that you raised some excellent points there, and one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that look, there are ways to have a debate about this. Look at what just happened in Mississippi with the flag, right? I mean, it was through a democratic process. And when you also look at public polling on this, I think it shows a stark contrast between what we're hearing from the mob and what the vast majority of Americans think about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. And we can't forget that. It might be a silent majority. You don't necessarily hear as much about them because they're not as vocal as the mob is right now. But we need to defend our history. We need to defend the heritage that we believe in this country. And that's what conservatives stand for. And certainly that's what we're doing at the Heritage Foundation.
We have to defend the Declaration of Independence. That is the apple of gold in the frame of silver, as Abraham Lincoln said, is the Constitution. Heritage does that every day. And HughForHeritage.com, Proud American. That's the hashtag, right, Rob? Proud American on everything this week.
That's the hashtag, Hugh. Celebrate it on social media and in your local communities.
Coming back with more of the Heritage Hour. HughForHeritage.com. America, stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Heritage Foundation.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
If you think of it, it's 12 guys.
I heard it on the Hugh Hewitt show. Came together to share their lives. Life-changing, eye-opening, almost impossible to describe.
And then God shows up.
And really, finding my heart, finding my soul.
Set myself free.
You're kidding!
No.
The Big Adventure.
The Big Adventure.
The Wild Adventure.
Whatever it is.
Oh, it's a manly man's experience. It really is. I'm 60, and if I'd had this knowledge at age 30, how would my life be different?
I don't have all the answers, and it's really important for me not to be distracted.
It took me and it took others to places that alone we could never go.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
Attention business owners. As America gets back to work, will customers know you're there? With little warning, the coronavirus attacked our nation and our well-being in ways we never anticipated. The tragic loss of life, unprecedented economic upheaval, and a shattered sense of security has left many individuals and businesses in shambles. While the aftershocks could be felt for months to come, they may not have to. There is hope for an extraordinary turnaround of your bottom line. But will you be prepared for America's grand reopening? All signs point to the biggest business opportunity of our lifetime, coming as early as this summer. A recent survey of local advertisers shows a 10-point jump in the number of local advertisers who plan to maintain or increase their spending. 1 in 4 businesses expect to spend more in advertising by the end of June, and more than half expect to restart or surge their spending by this summer. As the numbers forecast increased spending from advertisers across the country, will your message be seen and heard?
Well, welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. I caught up on Yellowstone last night. I'm now caught up. I got all 2 first seasons done, watched the first 2 episodes of season 3, Kevin Costner and Yellowstone. I love that show because I've been to the Madison River. 3 times I've been to the Madison River Valley on the Wild Adventure, twa.us. People who go on it, it's a dozen guys at a time, fly fishing, fellowship, good food, and friendship. They say the best things about twa.us. For example, this.
I found my heart again. I came looking for the one fish that Hugh Hewitt caught.
Place really for men to come find their hearts.
I have been part of these Groundhog Day shows for how many years have we done this? 5, 6 years in a row?
The questions that we talk through take a lot of religious crap out of it and really talk to the heart.
Even in the communications business, I'm supposed to be able to give words to what I see, hear, think, and feel. And I couldn't wrap my arms around what I had just gone through, the journey I'd gone through.
If guys could figure out some of this stuff when they're in their 20s, we could change a generation.
Stop right there. When that bit is the whole Yellowstone theory, which is Kevin Costner plays the grizzled 60-plus-year-old father, and he's got sons and near sons and daughters trying to figure out how to live life the right way. And what that guy just said, twa.us, if people could figure this out when they were 20, it would be a lot better when they were 60. That's what it's all about for the young guns. And you still got to figure it out even if you're older. So please go to twa.us. Let me now do the business story of the day. Yesterday, and this is brought to you by Andrew and Todd.com, Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian together. They give the best service to people who are looking to refinance their house. Absolutely the best. There is no one even remotely as close. Call 888-888-1172, and you'll get the best mortgage deal. The 10-year Treasury is at 0.64. Yesterday, the Dow went up 580 points. The NASDAQ went up 116 points. The S&P went up 44 points. Why did that happen? One statistic. For that statistic, I turned to the always popular nationalmortgagenews.com. Yes, I read everything in the morning. New home sales rose more than expected in May, with record low mortgage rates pulling buyers back into a housing market that froze up during the pandemic. Purchases of single-family homes climbed 16.6% to an annualized pace of 676,000. That was a huge bump because interest rates are at all-time lows. Now, you ask me, what does that mean? That means that new homes will be built in record numbers. Every new home under construction yields 4 jobs. Those 4 jobs eat away at the unemployment right away because there are other downstream jobs. All told, it's great news. That's why the market took off. People buying new homes is great news. There's no other way around it. There was also, however, great news on the therapeutic side of the COVID crisis. Here's Alex Azar on Good Morning America yesterday, cut number 2.
Just want to let you know about a really important announcement this morning that President Trump has secured 500,000 courses of treatment of remdesivir, and this through September. This is the drug that, if you're hospitalized, can reduce the length of your stay by a third. And we're working to make with our states to make sure it gets to the hospitals most in need.
We are figuring out how to treat the disease. The average age of the people getting the disease has dropped precipitously. As older people and fragile people stay home, they're self-isolating. Younger people who have said, okay, I can handle a week off, I can handle the disease, are going out. They should be wearing masks. Alex Azar also said this to Jake Tapper, cut number 1.
So, Jake, I want to go back to some of the things you said there because I want to make sure the American people are reassured about some of the actions of their government and of their healthcare system. You know, with all respect to the AMA, they don't have the information we have. We literally are on the phone with the hospitals in Arizona, Texas, California, Florida, every day measuring their PPE supplies and their reserves and making sure that we're there to support them. In Arizona, 15% of hospitalizations inpatient are from COVID. The rest of their capacity is consumed with other hospital uses and elective procedures, and you're going to see governors and hospitals.
Okay, stop right there. 15%. I'm sure you've seen the stories that Arizona is one of the hot spots. They do have a rising number of cases in Arizona, California, Florida, New York, other places. Those are among young people who do not require hospitalization. Please understand phase 2 is so different from phase 1. The media is not eager to tell you that because they want to meet up on Donald Trump, but not here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. The Heritage Hour continues. Stay tuned, America.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I saw the first video that went viral, but I didn't know until I watched Garantham's video that wasn't the only thing you did that day, and that was the second weapon that you retrieved from rioters who had broken into a patrol car. So tell us everything that happened prior to that, and then the second incident.
All right, so we're on the corner of the street watching, and I'm holding security for my team, and I see these police vehicles that are being destroyed, and the first thing I thought when I saw them was, hey, there's probably AR-15 patrol rifles in there, which there should, there honestly should be. The police do need them. They have more than enough cause to have them. So I told myself I need to keep an eye on this situation because this could turn bad very fast. So it did, gun comes out of the front passenger side, and I yelled gun, put my team immediately in a safe position and told them not to move. That guy fired several rounds into those vehicles and then went into a doorway and took cover. At that time, when he was firing, I was already moving on him with my drawing my weapon and coming up at him.
But you had a handgun. All you had was a handgun, and in the first incident that most people haven't seen, the rider who took the weapon was actually firing rounds off from that rifle, from that carbine, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
And who were they firing at? Was anybody hurt?
No, the second that rifle came out, someone was yelling, clear the block, and everyone kind of saw that this guy had a rifle, and he fired into the vehicle. But he fired in the vehicle, everyone had split and went different ways down the street, so there's no one there.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I've been doing a lot of publicity for the movie Uncle Tom. And I had an interview with the BBC radio. And I've interviewed BBC before, and the same thing happened. After a few things about the movie, I was then asked what I think about race and racism in America. And I said that it is no longer a major factor. Well, what about the Confederate generals after whom military bases have been named? Surely you protest that. I said, I'm indifferent. You're indifferent? There's a major who happens to be black who's deeply offended. I said, he can be offended, he cannot be offended. I don't care. Ask me about whether I am angry at the fact that 3% of the kids at my former high school can do math at grade level. Why am I never getting asked about the 14 people shot and killed in Chicago weekend before last, over 100 wounded? Ask me about the 50% urban dropout rate in high school. Ask me about something important. Were we to rename all of these military bases, were we to take down all the statues you find offensive, what would be the result? Would there be a decline in the percentage of people that feel that race and racism is a major problem in America? Really?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated.
Attention business owners. As America gets back to work, will customers know you're there? With little warning, the coronavirus attacked our nation and our well-being in ways we never anticipated. The tragic loss of life, unprecedented economic upheaval, and a shattered sense of security has left many individuals and businesses in shambles. While the aftershocks could be felt for months to come, they may not have to. There is hope for an extraordinary turnaround of your
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. The Heritage Foundation Hour continues. HughForHeritage.com to find out all we talk about. My guest is Genevieve Wood. She's senior advisor and a spokesperson for the Heritage Foundation. Genevieve, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Hugh, it's great to be on with you. I'm doing terrific. I'm actually coming to you live from the great state of Texas.
Well, you know, Texas is in the news. We're going to talk about that in a second. Genevieve, since it's your first time in a capacity as a Heritage spokesperson, would you tell the audience what you do for Heritage and how long you've been with them, just your history with Heritage?
Sure. Well, Hugh, I can't believe I'm actually coming up on almost my 14th year. I joined Heritage in 2006. And as you know, Heritage is a building that's full of researchers and scholars, over 100 experts in our building that come going out, whether it's for audiences or on radio programs like yours or TV and events, and talk to folks about a lot of those issues and present to them what I call kind of the intellectual ammunition. I mean, that's really a great part of what Heritage produces and provides for others is the intellectual arguments and ammunition you need, whatever the issue is, whether it's what we should be doing about China, whether it's how to expand school choice in your neighborhood or your state, or whether it's how we talk about what's happening today with identity politics and what you see happening in the streets. There are experts at Heritage on all of those issues. And like I said, I have the privilege of taking a look at their work and helping to translate it and get it before a larger public.
So, Genevieve Wood, what were you doing before you joined Heritage?
Well, I've worked for a lot of different groups. I've worked for the Family Research Council, the Republican National Committee, but I've also worked for groups like NBC News and National Public Radio. So you could say maybe I've been on both sides of it and seen it from both sides. When people say, well, is there really a leftist bent in the media? I am here to tell you, yes, there is. There always has been, but it's worse today than it's ever been.
Now, that's a decade and a half of taking the lighthouse of intellectual effort in D.C., the Heritage Foundation, and trying to get people to pay attention to what matters. How has your job changed? And in particular, right now we're running the Proud American, hashtag Proud American for Heritage. How have you seen receptivity to sort of traditional patriotism change in the last 15 years?
Well, Hugh, I don't think I've seen it change so much among the American public itself. But as I said, I mean, look, when I worked at NBC 20 some odd years ago, yes, I was like one of the few, I would just say conservative. I mean, I might have known one other Republican in the building, but I was certainly the only conservative I knew in the news area. And that was 20 something years ago. And you think about where we are today. I mean, there is no balance whatsoever. There's no even attempt for objectivity and trying to show both sides of an issue. There's already a narrative, and in most 95% of the cases, it is a leftist narrative. And so there's no receptivity to even showing the facts, having both sides on. And that is such a huge disservice to the American public who, you know, as I often say to you, most Americans don't do what you and I do every day for a living. They don't get up and try to read all the news sites and, you know, watch a lot of the news, go to all the different places like Heritage and download the information and really get a backdrop. They're busy working, paying their taxes, raising their families. They don't have the ability to do all of that. And so therefore, many of them have nothing but kind of, like I said, a leftist narrative every time they turn on the TV, whether they pick up their local newspaper. And that's increasingly a huge problem. And you've never seen it like you see it today.
You know, I guarantee, Genevieve, a story I covered this morning is the fact that housing starts were up 16.5% yesterday. The news came out. That's why the markets took off. And housing starts, I'll guarantee most Americans don't know that for every job in housing, it creates 4 jobs downstream. So it was tremendous good news for the economy yesterday. New home buyers are back. That is not anywhere I looked. I have to go to mortgagenews.com to find that out. Heritage also covers and indeed encourages a lot of what Americans generally used to do by rote. I want to talk about the Proud American hashtag right now. Why did Heritage decide to do this? How ought people to manifest it?
Well, because Hugh, I think most Americans are proud to be Americans. And unfortunately, they're now in a public space where they're being shouted down for even saying such a thing. And we wanted to help give people that platform. So if you go to hughforheritage.com, you're going to see a new ebook that we have up there that's all about ways that you can show why you were proud to be American, and to help people explain why they're proud. I mean, look, there's no country in the world that's freer than we are. We have the highest ideals of liberty. If you're concerned about individual freedom and being able to make decisions for yourself as opposed to a government, whether it's Washington, a federal government or a local government, nowhere in the world do you have the opportunity to live the life you'd like to live and live the life of your family and better yourself than in this country. And that's why more people, if you ask anybody in the world who wants to immigrate somewhere where they want to go, America is number one on the list, hands down. There is a reason for that. And we should be proud of that as a country. So if you go to hughforheritage.com, you're going to see the ebook that we have there on why you're proud to be an American. And it has a lot of ways that you can show that. I mean, some folks are social media warriors, and they can use the hashtag a proud American across all their different platforms. But there's other opportunities. And we've seen so many people put, you know, signs in their windows, signs in their yards about supporting first responders during this coronavirus. You know, you can put a proud American sign in your window and in your yard. And I guarantee you, as you all know, when you see a bumper sticker on a car that you agree with or a sign in a yard that you agree with, that encourages you when you see that. And so we're trying to get other Americans to encourage one another, because what they see on TV day after day is not what most Americans stand for.
You know, Genevieve, making the case for freedom is what I always try and do when I teach con law. I have to teach the law so people pass the bar. But I always begin, I'm on leave this year, but the first lesson is a brief history of nearly everything. How did we end up here? And we are a republic dedicated primarily to freedom. And I encourage each of my law students to reflect, if they want, they can stand up, close their book, leave the school, get in their car, drive anywhere they want in this great country, and it's a vast country, and start a new life with a new person. They can do whatever they want that's legal, and almost everything is legal in America. That is the essential nature of America. It's a freedom country. I don't know that we teach that and the value of that as much as we used to.
No, look, I mean, I've complained about the media. You can go right then on back to the school system, whether it's the elite college schools across the country, but even in our high schools, we're not teaching any of that. I come from a family of educators. My mom was a high school teacher. My dad was a college professor. But listen, when you don't teach people their true history, and not just teach them the history and teach them about the freedom you just talked about, Hugh, but you teach them a different story. When you rewrite the history of the country, you rewrite why it was founded. I mean, the whole 1619 Project in the New York Times, that is an attempt to rewrite history and tell students things that, frankly, are not true, to try to produce a different type of politics and movement today. And, sadly, so many of the people that you do see marching today, and I would also argue mostly the riot types, they're going to be pushing for less freedom in this country. This isn't about new freedoms. This is about less freedoms if we go down the path that many of the folks behind this movement are talking about. But unfortunately, when you don't know your history, you, as they say, may repeat it, or you're not going to make wise decisions. And I think, sadly, that's where we are right now. But that's, again, it's why it's important to push the Proud American campaign. It's because you have an opportunity to open up conversations, talk, and that's, again, one of the main things that we want to do here is encourage people to have conversations this 4th of July weekend with their friends, with their family. I know you have a lot of listeners that have children and grandchildren. There's opportunities here to talk with them about that, and we share some of those because I can guarantee you many of your children are not getting those lessons in many of the schools that they're going to. They're certainly not getting it in popular culture.
I am afraid that Thomas Jefferson, flawed person, slave owner, mistreated slaves, but the author of a non-flawed document, the Declaration of Independence. The flawed person produced the perfect document. Lincoln called it the apple of gold protected by the frame of silver that was the Constitution. And I am all for protecting Washington and Jefferson monuments because in the context of the 18th century, they put us on the path to freedom. I am not for protecting bases named for Confederate generals who broke their oaths and went to war to defend slavery. I'm even in favor, Genevieve, of changing the carrier stennis. I've heard that is being debated in the White House as well. I'm in favor of actually coming to grips with our history, but doing it in a way that allows people to argue about it, not be intimidated about it. Right now, there is a massive intimidation campaign underway in the American media to silence people who want to speak on behalf of freedom. It's crazy.
It's completely, and listen, and here's reality, Hugh, and I know this is somebody that you greatly admire and know well, and that's Ed Meese, former Attorney General of the United States, a long time, well, he's still with the Heritage Foundation, it's our Ronald Reagan fellow. Look, he wrote a piece for us just, I think it was last week, and he talks about in the 30 some odd years that he was in law enforcement. He's seen plenty of protests, and he's also seen plenty of riots. And he said, protests are a First Amendment, a great freedom in this country, and has brought some good change. True protests, peaceful protests have. But if you look at the history of riots, those rarely ever produce anything good. And they are exactly what you said, a way to try to intimidate others, not open up discussion, not try to have a national or a statewide dialogue about any issue. It's to try to shut the other side down. And the idea that unless we burn it down, somehow we're not making our point. Burning it down has never produced the next good thing. I mean, you go back to 1968, the part of D.C. that I live in today, was completely burned to the ground. And it's taken over 50 years to bring that part of the city back. And many of the people who lived there then have been pushed out. So,
I have to go. I have to go find that piece by Meese.
It's a great piece. I was encouraging people to look at it.
Yeah, General Meese was my boss, second attorney general I worked for, and he's a great American, and he was a young attorney general, and he has never quit the field. He's always, and whenever I go into Heritage, it seems like Ed Meese is still there, and General Meese has never quit the field, and I hope that's posted over at youforheritage.com, but where would they find it, Genevieve, if it's not?
If you go to heritage.org, you will find it right there. Just search Ed Meese. It'll be one of the first pieces that pops up for you.
Genevieve, thank you. And remember, Proud American is available at hughforheritage.com. Use the hashtag. It's a little quaint, isn't it, Genevieve? Last quick question. It's a little quaint, but it isn't dated.
It's never dated. And it's never been more needed.
You see, that's the difference. Tradition is there for a reason. It's like Christmas trees are quaint. But we have Christmas trees to remind us of what we're celebrating. And the American flag and the Proud American hashtags are a way of updating that tradition of patriotism, which is good, strong, and represented at the Heritage Foundation. Genevieve Wood, great to talk to you. Remember, hughforheritage.com. Coming up after the break, I'm going to talk with Jessica Anderson, who's the Executive Director of Heritage Action, so that you can find out how to do more than just use the hashtag, but make sure you use the hashtag Proud American. Also want to show you this, myrelieffactor.com. I wish it worked on allergies. My allergies are terrible this morning. I already took my Allegra. It's the only other thing I take besides Relief Factor every day. and it gets into my voice. But ReliefFactor.com cannot do anything about my allergies. All it does is support the relief of temporary aches and pains. And I'm still going out on the highways and byways of the trails right after the show because I always got to walk off my energy when I get keyed up by these stories of the day, especially this New York Times story. And ReliefFactor.com allows me to do that. But I also think be a proud American, as Heritage suggests. Use that hashtag. Also go to honorboundcoffee.com and subscribe to honorboundcoffee.com because not only are you demonstrating your patriotism, when you get your coffee from honorboundcoffee.com, every dollar of profit from that coffee, every dime, every penny goes to support the families of the American military. So drink Honorbound coffee and come right back for the last segment of today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Heritage Foundation.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Did you see this coming? Would you have predicted a large cave-in to an anti-religious force such as the left? Or is this somewhat surprising to you?
Yes, I did. In fact, I won't bore you with it, Dennis, but I actually wrote my dissertation on this at Michigan State University some couple decades ago. I could see this fact. A low view of Scripture combined with a high view of self is not a good formula for freedom. I'll repeat that. A low view of Scripture with a high view of self is always a formula for disaster and bondage and slavery and brokenness rather than repentance and freedom. Another way to look at it is Greek mythology, the story of Narcissus. Narcissism is always suicidal. And the more we gaze into the pool infatuated with ourselves, the more we displace God from where he rightfully belongs in our lives and commit the original sin and declare ourselves to be as God, the more we slip into the pool and subject ourselves to cultural suicide. And that is indeed what's taking place in the evangelical church right now. And, you've nailed it. It's a new religion. It's the religion of holy wokeness, as I said earlier, and the white guilt cult as opposed to the Christian religion of repentance, confession, and being born again.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Redux, or is this a far more cynical shell game whereby the left, the institutional left, says we have no way to win the election on policy platforms, so we're going to use violence on the streets, and that's going to be a feint or a dodge? Are these people sincere, Professor, or is this a political play?
Well, it's being aided and abetted by the DNC, and they see it as useful, as a lot of would-be architects of revolution do. They think it's useful to cause chaos or to pressure the blue states not to participate in the recovery or whatever their agenda for the November election. And in that sense, it's a little different. What I see as different from '68 is we didn't have mayors and governors actively resisting help from the federal government and either sympathizing with or appeasing or contextualizing the violence as we do in Seattle and Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Detroit. And the second thing is there was a group of liberals in those days, and they were attacking what they called the new left. They said, we're not part of this. We're not part of, and we don't have that. That is gone. The left has been fused into the party of AOC, the squad, the street. And Joe Biden is an empty vessel in which they plan to put into an agenda once he's elected.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. Jessica Anderson is the Executive Director of Heritage Action. I'm Hugh Hewitt. This is the Hugh for Heritage Hour, HughForHeritage.com. Jessica joins me by Skype. Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me.
Tell me what Heritage Action is, or actually I know, but tell the audience what the difference is between the Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action.
Heritage Action is the political grassroots arm for the Heritage Foundation. So we do grassroots lobbying, we engage directly with members of Congress on policy issues, and we work hard to equip those activists to defend freedom at the local and state and federal levels.
Now, Jessica, when I was your age, Heritage was just a think tank. It did not have Heritage Action. When did it come to be, and why did it come to be?
So Heritage Foundation realized about 10 years ago that to actually win the war against the left, it needed boots on the ground and it needed an activist force. And so 10 years ago, at the height of the Obamacare street fights that we saw in 2010, they founded Heritage Action to be just that, the tip of the spear and engaging on these policy issues in a meaningful way at the local level through the grassroots.
Now we see an important election looming on the horizon. And we hear the cliche, most important election of our lifetime. But the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left. I made this point on Meet the Press on Sunday. Joe Biden's sort of ghostly figure obscures how far to the left the Democratic Party has gone. And I don't want to presume on your agreement. Do you agree with me on that? Did you hear that, Jessica? I think the Democratic Party has gone further to the left than it's ever been. Agree or disagree?
Oh, no doubt. And the reality is it doesn't matter what Joe Biden stands for. He's beholden to the furthest left part of his party. So he's not going to be this moderate, let's make deals across the aisle figure that some in the Democrat Party wish he were. He is beholden to the AOCs and the Nancy Pelosi's, and he will be an empty vessel for them. And that couldn't be more clear in the lead up to November.
And so what would you tell your activists right now? And by the way, how do people get involved with Heritage Action?
So they can join Heritage Action any way that they can. All the information's at our website, heritageaction.com. You can become a sentinel, you become a grassroots activist. But more than that, I think what the moment needs is we need conservatives at the local level emboldened to fight back. And that's really what our focus is on these days, Hugh. Obviously, public policy is raging in Washington, but where the fight is, it's at the street level. And so we've asked our activists, we've asked our sentinels to call their mayors, call their governors, and give a very specific message that focuses on three things: quell the violence, restore law and order, and support the police. And this message is critical because, Hugh, as some of your previous guests have noted, mayors and governors are really on the front lines of what's going on right now, and they need courage. And for them to have courage, they need to know that freedom-loving, America-loving citizens behind them back them up. So if you're
Jessica, do you have any people in Seattle who are delivering that message? Because CHOP is a challenge that I'm afraid will spread if it is not met by the state and local authorities with a firm hand. They are destroying people's lives, their property, and their freedom in Seattle.
We are working right now to have freedom-loving patriots basically move into that area and start asking the mayor of Seattle to do just that, to quell the violence in the streets. Seattle hasn't been a hotbed for conservatism, which should shock no one, but it needs to be now, and we're seeing exactly why it needs to be.
When you say move in, you are not advocating the display of weaponry and violent encounters or anything. You mean political activity that results in a change of local leadership. I think that's what you mean. I want to confirm that.
Absolutely. What we're advocating for is that the activists that are in Washington state, that are in other states that are seeing the violence as brutal as it is in Seattle, that they call their mayors and that they give their mayors a shot of courage to go in there and to quell the violence and restore law and order. The mayors have to go in and do that. They have to bring the police forces in. They have to ask for help from the National Guard if they feel that they need it. And right now they're only hearing from one side. They're only hearing from the left. We want them to hear from freedom-loving patriots to balance that equation out.
I also want to know if Heritage Action is leaning on school boards to reopen schools, because I believe there is a groundswell of disgust with school boards across the country which are keeping schools closed in the fall or limiting their access. We have a minute yet, Jessica. Have you guys begun to fight that yet?
We have, and so we've been gathering signatures for a petition that asks governors and school boards to open American society, and part of that has to be with the schools, opening the schools, allowing kids to return to schools safely in the fall. Obviously, you can look at hotspots, you can look at the data, but this blanket one-size-fits-all, everything is shut down, is no longer sustainable, and we need to move past that as a country and open American society. So right now, so far, we've got 100,000 signatures.
Wow.
Of Americans supporting that, and we're continue to deliver that to governors to then work back in with their school boards.
So listen, America, go to heritageaction.com to be part of Heritage Action. Go to heritage.com to find out all the policy, and go to hughforheritage.com to find out all the interviews and resources I've talked about today. The Heritage Foundation is a sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show. I am so pleased that they are now part of our regular lineup. I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll try not to talk, and I'll try to get more allergy medicine so I'm not this hoarse. Thank you, America. Thank you, Dwayne, Adam, and Ben. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the Heritage Foundation.